All right, everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Fearcast. This is the podcast dedicated to OCD and anxiety spectrum disorders and getting your life back. I'm your host, Kevin Foss, and I'm a licensed therapist specializing in OCD and anxiety. And thank you so much for joining me for today's episode. This is a question and answer based podcast. If you have a question about OCD and anxiety treatment, you can message me over at fearcastpodcast.com. You can send me an audio message, which is what happened today. All of Joey's questions came through the website. So he went over to fearcastpodcast.com and clicked on the speech pipe button there, speak pipe button. I keep messing that up. And recorded his voice over there, sent it over to me. I listened to it, considered it, and I'm putting it up on this episode. As you all know, if you are returning listeners, audio questions jump the line. They go to the tippity top of the list of the next recorded episode. And that's what's happening today. So I think this question came in, it's like a day or so ago or 2 days ago. So that's what's happening today. But if you also want to send your question in through other means, you can go over to Instagram. I'm Fearcast Podcast over at Instagram. You can send me a message, a DM over there, and record your voice there, and I will get it. Of course, you can also record your voice and send that file over to questions@fearcastpodcast.com. All right, that's all the ways that you can get questions over to me. But thank you all so much for joining me for this episode. And I spent last week going, oh man, I hope I answered that question right. And I hope I didn't mess that up. And I hope it wasn't so offensive and I wasn't so terrible. But then I went, you know what? It's out there and we're going to wait to see all the hate. And I've yet to get any. So we'll see. And if this sparks you to go back, or this prompts you to go back and listen, cool, go check it out. If it was indeed awful, and I'll say this blanketly across the board, if there are things that I say in the podcast that I may have missed something, sometimes I do, right? I'm not perfect, I'm not psychic, I can't read everybody's situation, I get kind of a short question sometimes. So if there are things that I miss, you can put it in the question, or you can put it on the, send me a message over at Instagram, you can put it in the episode post on Instagram, go to the episode page of Fearcast Podcast, you can put it in the comments. If you are watching this on YouTube, put it below in the comments. And I want to hear all about your criticism, or hey, if you think I got something right, or if you think, yeah, that was decent guidance, or that was something to think about, also let me know. It's also fun to know. But if you are finding this through just a podcast, or if you're over at Instagram, or a friend group told you about this, or your therapist told you about this episode, awesome. Thank you so much for joining me. Okay, that's about enough of that. So we're going to jump into this question. So this is an audio question. How I work it is I will play Joey's question here, and then I will get on to my answer. So as an overview, we're going to be talking about relationship OCD today, and kind of how to, a little bit about how to deal with it. This Joey has some concerns about, being left behind, being forgotten, being cheated on maybe, and there is some some compulsions that he's doing about that. So I'm going to go over a little bit of some things to think about and some things to consider in the process. So without further ado, let's get on to Joey's question.
Hello. My main issue is relationship OCD, specifically relationship focused. My concern seems to switch, and the urges go in flows and waves. I feel like my biggest concern is the relationship ending or something happening to the relationship. But we've been together for about 4 years now and have lived together for 1. And I've noticed that the thoughts that I have change depending on the situation. For example, if my partner's hanging out with their friends more, then I start to worry that I'm going to be left behind. If my partner's making new friends or meeting new people, then I worry I'm going to be cheated on. And just a bunch of those types of overwhelming obsessions about the relationship. And my compulsions usually lead to me wanting to monitor the relationship, ask for reassurance, check phones, all that sort of stuff. So any advice you have would be very helpful. I've been dealing with this for a long time now and just need some advice to get through.
All right, Joey, thank you so much for sending in that question. Again, I love these questions. The folks who send in questions to this podcast, I appreciate so much for putting yourself out there and the vulnerability it takes to message me with this question and to kind of put your voice or your situation out there. And it means a lot to me. It means a lot to other listeners out there. I hope it's been clear that I'm not making up all these questions. I can't make up all of these questions. So these are real people in the universe. Well, usually on Earth, I would say, but people out there who have these questions, because if you have that question, there's someone else out there who has that question too. So Joe's question, I think, is a great one. And so my stance on relationship OCD, and again, y'all can tell me if I'm wrong, but this is the way that I've typically been treating relationship OCD. I think it's kind of this combination of things, right? It's this combination of genuine relationship concerns or problems or kerfuffles or snafus that are dealt with through OCD means. Now, of course, there are going to be, OCD will often take over, and the rumination and obsession and the what ifs and the worst case scenarios are obviously going to be at play. But the reality is there's no perfect relationship out there. Now, I'll say mine included, right? But there's no perfect relationship out there. Everyone has things to work on and things to improve on. Every person within relationships are going to have some insecurities. They're going to have some deficits. They're going to have some ways that they're not quite meeting with their partner in just the right way. So there are going to be, and that's relationship stuff. But then OCD jumps in and says, well, because of this, what if something else happens? I don't want that to happen. Let me ruminate, check, consider, and evaluate, ask for reassurance, right? Go down the rabbit hole. All of that to prove, disprove, find out, discover, ensure something, right? So there's going to be the combination of these things. So to a certain degree, what I'll be doing today is a little bit of validation of genuine relationship concerns, because I want to approach this, I think, in reasonable ways as best I possibly can. And I try to do this with the clients in my office. Is that, we want to look at with relationship OCD, and, to a certain degree, I look at this with all manner of OCD and all subtypes, is like, where are the genuine things that we can work on, and then how has OCD hijacked this process and has kind of taken over and has made it a terrible, terrible place to be, right? So we want to try to find this delicate balance, but I first just want to start with the acknowledgement that, man, Joey, relationships are super hard, and they can be really painful. They can be incredibly rewarding and life-giving and supportive and, all the other things too, right? It's easily one of the hardest and best things that you can do. And it's both, right? It's not one or the other. I hope it's not the one. I hope it's the best, but, they're not, because they're not going to be. All right, because the reality is you've got two people in these relationships, generally speaking, two people. If you've got more, great. My stance on polyamory is I can only disappoint one person at a time, so it's my wife. But for everybody else out there, Mazel Tov, do your thing. But generally speaking, within the people within that relationship, they're going to grow, they're going to shift, they're going to change, they're going to mature, they're going to develop individually. And together, you're going to develop in unpredictable ways sometimes, right? So as you're moving within your relationship, you're going to notice that there are going to be some shifts. Maybe they're going to be, they're going to be more interested in this, or they're going to be spending more time with these people, or something to that effect, right? And so there's going to need to be some adaptation and absolutely some communication about what's going on and what are you feeling and how are you feeling it and what can you do to work together as a team towards the goal, the common shared goal of the relationship that is both serving the relationship itself and serving the individual people, right? Because that's going to balance, and sometimes the pendulum is going to swing where one person needs more than the other person, and then it's going to switch, and the other person hopefully will then adapt and be there for that person, but there are going to be some shifts and changes. Kind of the idea is, as you're kind of growing together, you're going to kind of grow apart in some ways, and then hopefully you're going to grow back together. And sometimes hopefully you're both growing in the same direction together and moving towards one another. And in order to develop a healthy relationship, there needs to be this growth together. If the growth continues in opposite directions, that's oftentimes where relationships are going to fail. So part of what I want to be talking about today, and again, just part of that, is like, how are you two meeting with each other, and how, Joey, can you use your anxiety to turn it towards the relationship rather than turning inwards towards rumination, right? So as always, though, I want to know, if I'm meeting with somebody, what's the main fear? Like, what is the concern here, right? Now, I might use the term vulnerability or insecurity in this, right? Because there is, and we can say that for any fear, right? There's this this kind of core fear that is kind of chasing you down, that is holding you to these compulsive behaviors, right? That all the compulsive behaviors are in service of this fear, right? And it's this, it can be this insecurity of like, oh no, what if I'm, if they do leave me, or if they abandon me, well, then I'm alone. What if that means that I'm going to be alone forever? Does that mean I'm rejected? Does that mean I'm rejectable? Right? Does that mean I'm deficient in some sort of way? Does that mean I'm never going to be, fully happy within relationships? Right? This, and I then think about, like, I just mentioned this, like what are those compulsions doing for you? How are those compulsions that you mentioned helping you or serving that core fear? Right? I mean, you mentioned just a couple. You mentioned the reassurance. You mentioned kind of monitoring the relationship, checking phones. With the reassurance, is it like to get this false sense of security that in the stability of the relationship, right, or the safety of the relationship, right? Is this assurance that, like, that the relationship is strong and the ground underneath you is never going to fail, and you can relax and feel strong in it, right? Is it this, you were talking about the monitoring of the relationship. Are you kind of looking for danger signs or signs that maybe that the relationship is falling apart? Are you looking through their phone, your partner's phone, to look for text messages or other signs that there may be something afoot, right? So, all of these, compulsions, they serve that fear in the sense of they're trying to quell it. They're trying to answer this question, right? And oftentimes, not oftentimes, but folks in relationships can feel maybe threatened by other people. Right. I remember, being in a relationship, first starting, like one of my relationships in college, and, we just started in the relationship, and, then they were going out with another friend, like some female friends of hers, and they were off doing something, and I felt like really insecure, and it was this sense, and I didn't have the words at the time to really communicate, like both to her or to my friends, like what the heck I was feeling, but it was this concern of like, man, I'm like, I just finally got a girlfriend, and now she's off and she's gonna meet somebody else, and I'm gonna be single again and single forever, right? And I don't know what that fear is for you, Joey, but I know that sometimes we can be overwhelmed by these feelings. Now, I'll say this. Compulsions often add undue and unhelpful stress to the relationship and often cause more problems than they solve, right? So I'm hard-pressed to think about a situation, especially for relationship OCD, in which the compulsions did not serve as an added bonus, an added problem in the relationship. That if the relationship was going to fail, it might have failed, but boy, I'll tell you, putting compulsions into the relationship of checking, of evaluation, of criticism, of sometimes avoidance, all of these things, and the mental rumination that can come with it that serves as to pull you away from and out of the relationship and distancing you from the relationship and from that other person, it just pours jet fuel on the relationship and usually accelerates towards the end of the relationship. Think about it like a bicycle helmet made of cement, all right? Now, it's going to keep you safe. It's super strong. However, it's going to be super freaking heavy and probably is going to put you off balance and make you more unstable and more likely to crash and to fall and to hurt yourself in some other way, right? So if it's there to protect you, sure, it's going to protect you, I suppose, but oftentimes it's going to make it worse, right? So then what happens if we're asking you to kind of pull back from that? It feels really scary because now that fear, it feels like it's likely to happen, right? The safety mechanism is not there. Well, that's the uncertainty that we have to sit with. And I'll talk a little bit about building trust within the relationship and building within the relationship that can be a helpful step as you are pulling away from compulsions. You're pulling towards this other person in trust that things are going to be okay. And I know that can sound very reassuring, but we'll see how this goes. So as with everybody, I would, if someone's in the relationship or someone's in my office, I'd be questioning, all right, is there any veracity to these fears, right? Is there any legitimacy to this fear, right? Like kind of like with a lot of things, right? With let's say contamination. If they're worried about that they're going to get cancer. Well, do they have a history of getting cancer? They're like, well, I've gotten cancer 17 times before. I'm afraid I'm going to get it again. Like, well, you might. Like, that's a higher chance, right? If it's, I'm afraid I'm going to run somebody over with my car. And I ask him, well, is there any legitimacy to this? I was like, well, I've crashed the last, 7 cars that I have. I get into about a car accident, every 3 months or so. And I've hit like 3 people and run over 4 dogs. But like, oh my gosh, what if I run somebody over? I go, you might. Like, there's a good chance of that based on the situation. So, but now I'll say this, the vast majority of times people come into my office, it's like there's no veracity to it. It's like, it's possible, right? It's borrowing from all these other sources and these potentials that it could happen. But usually there's no direct link to it, right? So similar to this, right? We can acknowledge that, yeah, people do cheat, but have you, right? Is there this pattern of cheating? Is a pattern of infidelity in the relationship? Is this a pattern of her going out and, making out with like 15 other people? Is there a pattern of that, or is there not, right? Do you have a history of conflict in the relationship? Are you guys constantly fighting, getting in disagreements? Are you guys bickering about every single little thing, and not resolving it in an effective, healthy way? Is there evidence that she's going to leave you? Has she threatened? Has she said? Has she has she made these overt, clear communications that she wants to or will? Right? When she's around her friends, is she engaging in behavior that is causing doubt, right? And like overt things, right? Like, is she absolutely flirting with other people? Is there excessive touching, right? Things that the vast majority of your friends might go, hey, that's a little questionable, right? Or is it just tapping into your security and the what ifs, right? Is the fact that she's out with her friends and making other friends, is that contributing to this worry of, oh no, what if she leaves me, right? So one of the things that you can do, and I hope you're seeing a therapist and talking about this with them, but some things you might do is to challenge, where are these thoughts coming from? Is there any grounding to it? In which case you might be able to process some of that, and if there's something to do about it. Sometimes, especially for relationship OCD, sometimes communicating some of these concerns, sometimes making boundaries around some of these things can help. Now, it's not a fix because I'm talking about just the relationship part right now. It's the OCD part that's having to sit with the discomfort and the uncertainty and the unknown components to it. Now, let's jump into some of those acceptance pieces. What are you going to have to accept? I love this line. Every relationship you're ever going to be in is going to fail until one doesn't. And that's even a lie by itself, because every relationship is going to fail at some point because one of you is going to die, right? But the vast majority of relationships, no matter how long you're going to be in, no, that's not true. The vast majority of relationships you're going to be in are going to fail, romantic relationships, right? I have broken up with all my girlfriends except that one, right? That one that I got married to. So, but then again, that's not a guarantee that relationship is going to last forever. Stuff happens, right? So we do need to accept that as a reality, that there is inherent instability within relationships, but it doesn't mean that that is the forefront of that needs to be the forefront of concern, right? It's kind of like, planes do crash. But that doesn't mean that it's going to happen to yours, or it's going to happen all the time, right? Or that it's going to be, absolutely terrible. This relationship for you may be the one for you, right? But it might not be. So we don't know. But what we do know is we can work on building the relationship as best we possibly can. I think that is a helpful and healthy redirect of that. But we can accept in the back of your mind and acknowledging that narrative, we can say, yeah, it's possible, right? Because as I mentioned, there are no guarantees of relationship. She's a free agent. You're a free agent. Both of you can leave. You both can find a new relationship if you want at some point in the future, right? So we can say, all right, that story is possible, but how much time do I want to spend on that, and how much do I want to make that the forefront? Similar to that, you can cheat, she can cheat. It can happen, right? And she might develop she might develop more and different friends and other relationships, and so can you, right? These are things that we can accept as truths within a relationship that can feel uncomfortable, right? But we accept those as kind of existential facts, existential realities, not the ones that then we need to say, because of that, I should engage with my compulsions. Instead, we say, those are existential facts, just like planes can crash. But I'd like to get on this flight to go on this vacation, right? So we recognize them as facts, and they may be uncomfortable situations and uncomfortable realities that we acknowledge as something we need to make space for, but not something that we need to let rule our life through compulsion. You get the idea. All right. So one of the things that I'd encourage you to do is start building trust in your relationship, but not through seeking reassurance or not seeking certainty about it. Right? We can observe the relationship itself and build confidence through your experiences with this person. Right? What have you noticed about their interactions with other people? They do go out, they spend time with other people, but they keep coming back to you. How is it that they talk to you and about you, about the relationship? Do they speak well of you? Do they say things like, I love you and I want to be with you? Maybe that's what they are saying. Let's act as if that's true. What if that was true? How would that change the necessity of those compulsions? How would it change your willingness to engage with them, right? Resisting compulsions is also going to put you in a position where you can build that trust, right? Compulsions are outsourcing reassurance and confidence in the relationship to something else, right? But instead, when we get rid of those, we get rid of the compulsions, we get to turn our attention towards this person, and we get to practice trust. We get to practice building confidence. And we build confidence through experience, through observation, and through slowly showing ourselves that there is consistency, that I can trust this, that it can work out. But we also know those existential things that we just talked about. Yeah, they're there, but again, we build this confidence, right? I am confident that my car is going to work. I've gotten into it pretty much every day, and it has worked. There have been some funky things that have happened, but generally speaking, that car's going to work, right? I have confidence in my relationship because I keep showing up, she keeps showing up, and so far as I know, we haven't cheated on each other. So great. But we'll see, right? And we've expressed a goal, a desire, an interest in not doing that. So we're going to continue to not do that as best we possibly can, right? Okay. So again, I mentioned, reflect on what your partner has said, not what anxiety says about it, right? Okay. So let's get on to, so I'm curious. Before I even get into some exposure-y ideas, right? how are you maintaining your relationship? Because you kind of said it like, she's going out with her friends and spending a bunch of time with them, and it's leaving you feeling kind of left out, kind of forgotten. Have you communicated this to your partner? Have you shared with them that, you are feeling a little left behind, you are feeling a little forgotten? Are you invited to go and you choose not to go? Are you invited to go and you are isolating there, right? So this can kind of be this balance, and this is where it would be helpful to chat with a therapist. Are you invited to go and you spend time, but you're still feeling alone, right? Is this something that is, a you thing? Or is this the structure of the relationship? And it is in fact happening, because those two things can be different, right? You can feel alone and feel left out, but also actively be included, right? Those of us with the weird version of ADHD and depression, we can often feel alone even though we may not be, right? I don't know if that's happening for you, but that's one of those examples that you can kind of work on and process through with a therapist. So one thing I would encourage for you to consider is for you to look at the relationships and friendships that you're having, and to work on making the best version of you that you can. Right. So this version involves, building hobbies, building friendships. How are you doing at work? Are you connecting with other people there? How are you doing? Certainly with resisting compulsions, right? But building the best version of you and looking at where your maybe weaknesses are, or foibles or insecurities, and are you taking steps towards challenging those and building upon those, right? We need to be a good, healthy person within the relationship to bring to that relationship, and hopefully they are doing the same. I wonder, how are you and your partner also building into the relationship? It's so important. Remember I mentioned at the very top of this that hopefully you guys are building towards each other, but sometimes as you grow, you're going to kind of hopefully both grow to the left and both grow to the right, but not go in opposite directions of one another, right? Are you two working together to build that relationship? And maybe I'm wondering if there are times that you have felt like you're being left out, that you could intentionally spend time together, intentionally spend time going out on dates, maybe asking to go with her to some of these outings, right? Is it like a mixed group? I don't know what the situation is, but ask to go. Or if she's going to go with her friends, can you go with your friends to go do something? But then intentionally make a point to not go out with your friends sometimes and just spend time with each other, right? Now, this can feel really hard, right? Now, when we get to the compulsions bit in just a moment, for some clients, pretty much every client I've talked to with relationship OCD, when there's the urge noticed to give into some compulsion, it is that dissociative process, the disconnecting process, where they're usually going inside their head or they're disconnecting from this other person in one way or another. A difficulty can be leaning into the relationship, even in those moments of doubt and fear and insecurity. And it might be making a positive comment towards her, maybe saying, taking a step towards vulnerability, step towards intimacy, in whatever direction that means for you. But finding a way to lean into the relationship rather than what OCD wants you to do is to step out of it for a moment, ruminate, get certainty, check, reflect, get certainty. I mentioned that before. All those things, and instead recognize that you're going to accept the uncertainty. You're going to acknowledge that all those fears that we talked about, those existential possibilities, she leaves, she cheats, you cheat, you just grow apart from one another. Maybe that's going to happen. And instead, you lean into the relationship and say, well, for the time being, I'm going to make this the best relationship that I can, as best I can, through doing the opposite of what my compulsion says that I should do, right? All right, Well, why don't we just get on to some of the exposure ideas? So, all right, so if you've listened before, you know that I think OCD isn't really a thought problem, it's a feeling problem, right? There's a sense of fear, a sense of uncertainty. The squickiness of that thought is overwhelming and uncomfortable, right? But the solution isn't through ruminating and getting certainty and checking, is to outsource that, but is instead to say, boy, this is really uncomfortable, and I'm going to stay in this, I'm going to allow this feeling to be there. I don't need to like intentionally heap it upon myself unless you're intentionally doing an exposure to practice. But the idea is to have that feeling in greater and greater amounts while practicing response prevention to show yourself that I can have these thoughts. And while uncomfortable, they can be there and I don't need to do anything about them, right? I can notice it and I can continue to move on with it. All right, so some of the things that we can do with this, right? As you're acknowledging the compulsive urge, the desire to check, right? We're practicing sitting with this uncertainty, sitting with this feeling, right? So one of the ways to do that, absolutely, when that thought arises, acknowledging maybe she will. Maybe she will break up with me. Maybe she will cheat on me. I don't know. Now, we're not trying to convince yourself that it will, right? Or that she will, or that the relationship is doomed. But saying, all right, what is the feeling that I get when that happens? And it might be this sadness. Yeah, there is sadness. There might be fear. Yeah. There might be uneasiness. There might be a sense of loneliness. Yeah, all of that is there. Make space for it. What does it feel like for you to have that feeling? What does it feel like for you in your body? And acknowledge that it's there. Breathe into that feeling. Say, yeah, this feels uncomfortable and I don't like it and I don't want it, but it's there, right? Similar to that, you can practice that ACT approach of acknowledging thoughts, right? I'm noticing the thought of blank. I'm noticing the thought right now that she might cheat on me, right? I'm noticing a mental image that I just don't like, right? I'm noticing a feeling of loneliness. Yeah, you can notice all those feelings, right? And then we're saying, what's a healthy thing to do about that? What should I do about this? What is the best way for me to deal with this feeling or this experience, right? That's going to be sustainable, that's going to build your relationship, that's going to get you through that situation in a healthy and sustainable way. Right? So we can notice that we have thoughts, feelings, images, sensations, and urges. When we start with just saying, what am I experiencing right now? What's the constellation of nonsense that's going through my brain and my body? What of those things can I do anything about in a functional, reasonable way? And what of those things have I tried to deal with through compulsive behaviors and have got freaking nowhere, or has, like the cement helmet, has actually made things worse, right? And this is where working on this with the therapist can be helpful in talking about what's a more effective and reasonable response to some of those thoughts, right? But certainly for you, noticing what has worked and what hasn't worked, or what has and has not worked, is a good start for this, right? But again, noticing that thought, and sometimes, if you heard me talk about, or if you're familiar with the passengers on the bus analogy from acceptance and commitment therapy, that's a really good place to be in terms of practicing noticing thoughts, feelings, images, sensations, and urges. The basic idea of the bus analogy is you can imagine, if you've ever been on a bus, that the bus is, it's going to some destination, right? And it's going to make these various stops along the way. And some people get on and some people get off, right? Some people stay on for a long period of time. Some people, they're just going like one stop. It's like a quick little thing, quick little on and off. But I want you to imagine with this that you are the bus driver and that you are the person who gets to decide what's on the front of the bus. Like, where is it going, right? It says on the front, we're going uptown, we're going downtown. Right? But you are the one with the steering wheel who gets to decide where we're going, right? And how we're going to get there too. Or if you're going to divert yourself entirely and not go at all. Now, along the way towards the destination that you have, and maybe right now the destination for you is healthy relationship. Awesome. You got your steering wheel, you're moving along to the healthy relationship destination as best you can. And now along the way, passengers are going to get on and off that bus. Some passengers are going to be a delight. Right? It's going to be a thought that pops in that says, this is a great relationship. Isn't she wonderful? Oh, I love those thoughts, right? It might be a thought about that special time that you shared that one time. You know what I mean? Yeah, that was a good memory. Yeah, you can hop on the bus. You can hang out on that bus for a long period of time because that's a fun thought. That's an enjoyable thought, right? Now, eventually, like all things, those thoughts are going to hop out, and you're going to get thoughts about work or thoughts about other responsibilities that you have, and they'll be on there on your mind. And yeah, you're like, yeah, I got to do that too, and whatever. But sometimes you're going to get thoughts that are going to pop onto your bus that you're not going to like. They're going to be their thoughts or accusations, and they're going to scream at you. And they're gonna come with a friend, and that friend might be fear or anxiety or uncertainty or loneliness or depression, right? And they might come with it a mental image, and they might come with it the urge to do something. Now, these passengers come on, and sometimes they come on at predictable intervals, right? It might be that every time your girlfriend goes out, man, all of a sudden these passengers hop on the bus. We can start to anticipate that those passengers are going to come on at certain intervals, right? I remember I shared this before, that whenever I would end a recording of a podcast, I used to get this thought, oh, this is the end of my career, and I'm going to say something that's going to be so offensive or so wrong or so unhelpful that it's going to make people worse. I used to get these thoughts. And, I got used to that voice getting on the bus, that at these regular intervals, at the end of a recording, well, this passenger would hop on, and I would have those thoughts, and they would be on the bus. Now, here's the thing. You're the passenger, or you're the bus driver. You get to decide where you're going to go. There is that little magic yellow line on a bus where the passengers can't get on. For your thoughts, they cannot cross that line. They cannot grab the steering wheel and direct you. They cannot hurt you, kill you, or do anything, or make you do anything that you don't want to do. But you have the choice on what you're going to do with them. So sometimes the passengers on the bus are going to be really loud and rowdy and annoying. So do you stop your bus, stand up, go back and argue with them and try to throw them out? Do you try to argue against them? Do you try to provide evidence about what's not, what is or is not going to happen? Do you try to go back into your memory and go, see, she said this or this happened, and therefore that? Ultimately, all these things, they're trying to get these passengers to get off the bus so that you can finally have peace again, right? And the problem is sometimes it works. And they are off the bus, you get back on, you sit down, you grab the steering wheel, and you go to the next thing, and sooner or later, they hop back on the bus, and now you're back at the beginning, right? And it's frustrating. And when you go back to argue with them, the bus doesn't move any further. It stays right where it is, and you're kind of in this holding pattern. One thing that we can do with this ultimately, and this is what we're talking about, is if we're saying, I'm not going to interact with them, I'm going to tell them that they can stay there eventually. They'll eventually get off the bus. But you're not going to do anything about them. They're going to sit right here, and they're going to yell at you. They're going to be right in your ear telling you X, Y, or Z is some nonsense. And we're going to hear it, we're going to notice it, and we're just going to maybe listen for that one passenger on the bus that is going to remind you of that wonderful time, or you're going to reflect back on how fun they are, right? Or what is it that attracted you to them? Yeah, you can refocus on that person because they might be on your bus at that time. But you're not going to divert. They're going to say, don't go to healthy relationship. They're going to go over here to reassurance town. Make a left. Get over there. We're not. You get to control where you're going to go. Now, I can torture this metaphor further if you'd like. I shan't. But it's important to remember that, again, that passenger is going to go off the bus, and we can say, I notice that this thought is there, and I don't need to do anything about it. But I know I feel it, and it's uncomfortable. And I'm just going to keep driving towards my relationship, towards the goal that I have on the front of this bus, right? Now, another thought that I had in the past, and this is kind of that back to that like regular interval sort of thing. So back in the day, when I would get home from work, it'd be like 5 or it'd be, we, as a therapist, we have weird hours, right? My wife had a consistent job at the time. She was working for Caltech. So she would drive out to Pasadena, work there, and then drive back, right? So she'd be home at like 5 or 6, I forget the time. And I'd be home, at who knows when. In private practice, it's all over the place, right? But if she would be like, okay, I'll be home at 6, right? Be like, great, she'll be home at 6. Go on throughout my day. 5 o'clock, fine. 5:30, totally fine. 5:59, totally fine. 6 o'clock, she'll be home. 6:01, she's probably dead somewhere. I don't know where she is. It's 6:01, she said she'd be home at 6, she's dead. And my brain would always be like, she's dead in a ditch somewhere. Like her car rolled over and is in a ditch, and she's like drowned in the ditch, or just somehow like she's dead. That's all I knew, right? And routinely, right? If it was 5:59, doesn't matter. She got home early. Great. 6 o'clock, awesome. 6:01, dead. It turns out she did not die, but that's what my brain would do every single time. And not every single time, for a long time, that's what would happen. And eventually my brain got bored with it because I also did nothing about it. I wasn't going to text her, hey, where are you? Now, if it got to like 6:30, I'd be like, hey, everything all right? But she'd always text me back, right? So I eventually started to show myself and started to learn, okay, she saying I'm going to be home at 6 doesn't mean I'll be home at 6. It means I'll be at 6 adjacent. Now, of course, that's what it means. We all know that, but my dumb brain didn't know that. So I needed to show it through no longer texting, unless it was a wild emergency. If it was like 8 o'clock, I'd be like, I should text that lady and see what she's up to. But it was always that she's going to be dead. My point in bringing this up is to say, all right, at your regular intervals, what passengers are going to show up? How do you notice them? What do they look like? What do they sound like? What do they say? What are they wearing? How do they interact with you? Name them if you want to. Name the different voices and how they try to torture you, how they try to get you to interact with them. What are the tricks that they use to try to pull you in, to say, stop your bus and to go back and fight with them? Right. All right. So let me just get back to the last thing. So the last thing that I would suggest is there are a lot of movies out there that are going to be great for this in terms of watching breakdowns in relationships or difficulties within relationships and then practicing sitting with the discomfort that may come up. So some of the movies that came to my mind, Forgetting Sarah Marshall, also just a very fun and funny movie, I think, but I don't know. I'm a weirdo. The Breakup. Could be better, could be worse, but that's a fun one about people fighting. Marriage Story, I'll be honest, I have not watched this movie, but it's about a divorce, which is super fun. So something worth thinking about. 500 Days of Summer might be a solid one in terms of this is about a relationship that grows really well and then slowly starts to fall apart, right? And sitting with the discomfort and the possibility and the associations and the the stuff that you feel matches your relationship as well. Just because it's in the movie doesn't mean it's going to happen to you, but it's going to feel uncomfortable. We're going to make space for that feeling. Okay, last one, Scott Pilgrim versus the World, another fun movie, but it's about, kind of dealing with jealousy, dealing with, competition and other people who are vying for the attention of your partner. So that could lead to breakup. Anyways, those are some ideas. I have talked too much as always. So Joey, thank you so much for this question. Again, if you think that I nailed it and got some things right, let me know. If you think I totally miffed it and whiffed it and whatever ifing that you think I did, let me know in the comments. And I'm a big boy. I can probably handle it. I'll cry a little bit, but not a lot. Just a teeny tiny bit. But I'm a therapist and we got tissues freaking everywhere. All right. So until next time, everybody, take a risk, challenge yourself, and don't take your brain too seriously. Bye. Thank you for listening to the Fearcast. If you would like your question answered on a future episode, please click on the Submit a Question link at fearcastpodcast.com. If you would like your question answered sooner, please send me a recording of your question to questions@fearcastpodcast.com or by sending me an audio message through Instagram by DMing me at fearcastpodcast on Instagram. If you like the Fearcast, please write a review on your podcast platform of choice. Please remember that the Fearcast is not a substitute for psychotherapy. If you need a little bit of help in your recovery, please go over to fearcastpodcast.com and click on the Find Help link, and there's going to be some information for you there. So until next time, take a risk, challenge yourself, don't take your brain too seriously.